Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner, and today I want to be the director, or I want to be Dylan Groenewegen, because I want to analyze today's stage and break down what happened in stage 2 of the Saudi Tour. Now, yesterday was stage 1, and we saw Dylan Groenewegen just wax the whole field and win stage 1 here at the Saudi Tour. Now, before today's stage 2 starts, we got to understand that it's a flat stage, it's going to be a field sprint, and when you're Jayco Alula, you got to understand that they want to win today's stage, right? They want to take everything. Alula is actually one of the towns there in the Saudi Tour, so of course they want to win as much as they can because it's their secondary sponsor on their jersey, Jayco Alula. So when you're coming in with Dylan Groenewegen, who's got to be one of the best sprinters in the world, I talked about it on yesterday's Beyond the Coverage about how dominant of a sprinter he was and how he's won multiple stages at the Tour de France. Got to be one of the hands down best sprinters in the world when we're talking about going up against the best at the Tour de France. And here on stage 2, you got to believe you almost go ahead and give them the prize, right? Because they're that dominant. Now, I'll break down a little bit of the stage, but this isn't the butterfly effect, but I want to give you some kind of idea of how today's stage 2 of the Saudi Tour went. So if you haven't watched it already, don't let me be a buzz killer for you. Go ahead and pause this for a minute, watch the stage, and come back, and I'll break it down for you. Now, when we get about 30 kilometers into the stage, it's when it starts getting really dicey. Crosswinds start happening when they make the left turn. Then we're going to see Dylan Groenewegen ride to the front. He's going to give a little bit of head motion, arm motion to the riders to try to get everyone to move over further to the right so you can start the real echelon and just blow this race up and split it to parts and make it as difficult as it can be on everybody that won't make the split in the front group of about 35 riders, I believe it was. So Jayco Alula is on the front, and they're just driving it throughout this whole 30 kilometers all the way to just under 10 kilometers to go. And then we'll see Matthias Jorgensen from Movistar get off the front with an attack. And we're going to see Jayco back there still pulling with all the other teams 100%. 7 kilometers ago, we're going to see that back group with Bahrain Victorious back there, who had the GC winner from last year's edition, Santiago Buitrago, who missed the split back there. And yesterday's second place on the stage, Rajovic for Bahrain Victorious, missed the split too. So Bahrain Victorious is back there pulling like crazy to try to bring these two groups together. And Jayco rider back there, the young 22-year-old rider, Engelhardt, he's back there riding on the front trying to bring it back together while his teammates are on the front group with Dylan Groenewegen riding 100% trying to blow the race apart. So keep that in mind, because as the two groups come back together about 7 kilometers ago, we're going to see the Movistar rider, Matthias Jorgensen, get caught. And then with 1.5, 1.3 kilometers to go, we see it's Jayco Alula up there, and it's Stibar on the front driving as hard as he can with 2 Bahrain Victorious riders on his wheel. He'll pull off. Bahrain Victorious rider will do a massive pull on the front, and then he'll pull off with about 800 meters to go. And now we see Jayco on the front. Jayco doesn't have a choice to take the front here at 800 meters to go, because if we look to the left of the picture there, it's DSM attacking up the left side of the road. So Jayco have to start their lead out 100% here with Elmer, and he has to go 100% all in. That's the next 300 meters. That leaves Luka Mezgec on the front with 500 meters to go. Now, Luka Mezgec, we saw in yesterday's stage 1, just devastate the field in the final lead out coming in, and then hand-delivered a stage 1 victory to Dylan Groenewegen, his teammate, and now he's trying to do the same thing with 500 meters to go. Only problem is, just as they get under 300 meters to go and the barricades start on the right side of the road, Luka Mezgec's speed starts to drop a little bit. Now, I'll get back to what's happening here later, but from behind we see it's Cees Bol starting to sprint, and just in front of him it's Bahrain Victorious, Jonathan Milan. Now, Milan was up there on his teammate's wheel with just under 1.2 kilometers to go, and as his teammate died, we see him drift back. As I back the film up, he'll drift back, he'll bump with Cees Bol, but he'll win that fight to get on Dylan Groenewegen's wheel. Now we fast forward just under 300 meters to go. Like I said, Cees Bol started his jump, but guess what? Jonathan Milan did too at about 270 meters to go. Now Milan is full gas on the pedals. He does a wise and tactical move as he goes over the top of Luka Mezgec, who's fading now. He's going to pull over to the right side. We see behind that it's Dylan Groenewegen, yesterday's stage 1 winner. He gets tied up just a little bit. I believe just a brief hesitation on wanting to shoot the gap between his teammate's wheel and the fencing. Once that gap opened, though, he slots up and he's on Milan's wheel. And about 100 meters to go, he starts his sprint and explodes out off on the pedals as he goes to the left side of the road, way far left out there. And it's a bike throw at the line for Jonathan Milan, Bahrain victorious, who were put to the sword earlier with 30 kilometers to go, salvaged the whole stage, closed the gap at 7 kilometers to go for their GC leader that won yesterday's race, last year's race, Santiago Buitrago, and now they win today's stage with Jonathan Milan. Now, of course, there's that 1,000 stare there that we see from Dylan Groenewegen in the press tent as he's getting ready for the podium ceremonies. And certainly at this point in time, Dylan Groenewegen is thinking, what happened? What went wrong? Why did I lose today's stage? Well, now I'm going to back the film all the way up to the beginning of the stage and talk about what I would have done as a director or what I would have done as Dylan Groenewegen. Now, I said he's the fastest rider in the race before today's stage. No one would argue with me whatsoever that Dylan Groenewegen was head and shoulders the fastest, best sprinter at this Saudi Tour. So what I'm saying as the director sitting there in the bus, guys, we want the race to be as easy as possible. We have the fastest sprinter here. We don't need to make the race hard. We have 2 very young riders on our team. There's only a team of 7 riders here at the Saudi Tour, and 2 of the Jayco Alula riders are only 22 years of age. That means they're probably not going to be super strong and certainly not very educated when it comes time to doing the sprint. So you can probably take those 2 riders out and you're left with 5 riders. One's Dylan Groenewegen. That means you have 4 riders with some experience there. Now they're quality riders and they're in the form of Lucas Polstelberg and, of course, Elmar Renders, the Dutch rider that probably came on the Jayco Alula. They're signing with Dylan Groenewegen when he signed. I assume that's the main reason. When I looked at the resume, I wasn't familiar with Renders' results, but I looked to see they both joined the same time. They're both Dutch riders. And I see he is a quality rider because he was at the very finish of today's stage doing the lead out with only 800 meters to go. Now, we go back and we look at the team again. It's Luka Mezgec, who, of course, is the experienced lead-out rider, and Stibar, that's 37 years of age. So we know he has Dylan Groenewegen, that is, some experience on the team. But when you're starting today's stage and 2 guys are 22 years of age and you're only left with 5 other riders on the team, I'm saying as the director or Dylan Groenewegen, who's almost 30 years of age, he's 29 years of age this year. So when I'm Dylan Groenewegen, you should be able to look at your team and go, 2 young guys, I can't count on them. So that means I got to keep the pace as controlled as I possibly can. When I looked at everything at the finish, when we're talking about that last 1.3 kilometers when Stibar's on the front, and then when we're talking about 800 meters to go when it's Renders on the front, there were no choices. There's no mistakes made there. When I look at the tack that was set from Jonathan Milan just under 300 meters to go, and I look at Dylan Groenewegen's moves throughout the finish of the stage, that's the best you can hope for. But when you back it up to about 30 kilometers to go, when the crosswinds were really starting, and Dylan Groenewegen and Jayco Alula's at the front, pulling like crazy, trying to destroy the field, when you got the fastest guy in the world, when we're talking about the Saudi Tour at this moment, Dylan Groenewegen's the fastest, right? Nobody wants to argue with me. Even on today's stage, after riding the front, being that aggressive, he only lost by just a little bit to Milan, who put on a spectacular show, jumped from 270 meters out and held it all the way to the finish to hold off one of the best sprinters in the world. Congratulations, Jonathan Milan. This show is not to take away from anything from how impressive you were. But again, if I'm trying to be Dylan Groenewegen or the director there of Jayco Alula, I got to break down today's stage and analyze it. And I'm breaking it down saying, why do we need to make the race harder? We don't need to make the race harder. What we need is as fresh of guys as we can possibly have at 1.5 kilometers to go, and as many of them as we can possibly have take control of the race, control it all the way into 200 meters to go, launch Dylan Groenewegen, and have him win back-to-back stages here at the Saudi Tour. So when we go back to that press conference and you see Dylan Groenewegen with his eyes just staring off, trying to figure out what went wrong. I'm taking him back to 30K to go. You guys were too aggressive, raced too hard, lost a little bit of power. In the end, you didn't have Stibar at the crucial moment when you really needed him. And of course, Luka Mezgec, he was left there at the front just a little bit too late, and his legs just weren't as fresh as they were on yesterday's stage 1. That's my breakdown for Dylan Groenewegen. Hopefully it helps you out here in later stages here at the Saudi Tour and see if you can get that second win here at the Saudi Tour before it finishes. Good luck, Jaco Alula, and best of chances there for Jonathan Milan to come back and beat everyone again, because that was an impressive finish for 270 meters in the wind to beat Dylan Groenewegen on stage 2 of the Saudi Tour. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next edition.